Welcome back to the class. So how are you all? Be ready with your rough notebook and pen. Is that okay? Shall we start our class? Okay. So last class we were discussing the second concept. So what is the name of a chapter? So chapter, it has a 4 concepts to discuss. In the chapter, actually we have 5 concepts to discuss in the chapter. So the chapter name is, what is the name of the chapter? Yes, it's the second chapter. The name of the chapter is the land, soil, water and natural vegetation. Natural vegetation and wildlife. Wildlife uses. So it's the name of a chapter. What are all these? So these all are the example for natural resources. For the natural, it's an example of natural resources. In that we discuss about the land. The meaning of land, land use and land degradation, land conservation we discussed in the last class. And now we are in the soil, the concept soil. Then what is soil? What do you mean by soil? What is soil refers to? Yes, soil is a grainy substances. It's a tiny grainy substances which is covered on the earth's surface, isn't it? And it's a very thin layer which is covered on the earth's surface. It's made up of minerals and it is made up of organic matters, minerals, chemical matters. We have discussed about the factors which helps or which forms the soil. The factor of soil formation, we discussed about that, isn't it? Factors of soil formations, we discussed about that, and also for the soil profile, we discussed. Now we have 2 more concepts to discuss in this soil. It's about soil degradation and conservation. Soil degradation. Soil degradation and conservation measures. What is this degradation? Degradation is depleting. Degradation refers to depleting, like reducing its quality, getting out of its power and getting less quantity, getting lower, existing. So it's about the soil it's getting lower of the resources, like it may be quality, the quality quantity is degradation, soil degradation. What is the main reason for this soil degradation? Is what we have. Yes. Now both the human beings and natural factors, both the human beings and natural factors are responsible for degradation of soil. So what is this natural factors and human beings? The activities of human beings and natural factors are the 2 important factors which lead towards the degradation of soil. These are the 2 factors. It's cause for degradation of soil. That's what we will discuss about. First, the factor like a human beings. What are those human beings activities? So human activities which is leading towards degradation of soil. Any example? Yes. Mining activity. Afforestation. What do you mean by afforestation? It's chopping of trees, clearing the land surface by cutting the trees. It's afforestation. It may be for the construction of buildings, roads, or any industries. It is not. It's clearing the area by chopping of trees. What is afforestation? It's one main activity of a human. Afforestation. It is from the ancient period. It's been continuing afforestation, and it's the main reason for having degradation of soil. How this afforestation affect the degradation of soil? So the soil, it will remain there even under the run of water, because the roots of a tree that holds the roots Suppose it's a root, it's a tree. The roots of a tree that holds the soil there, that don't allow the soil to degrade or erosion, they don't allow soil to get erode, or that don't allow the soil to go along with the runoff water because of these roots. Suppose we cut the trees, then the root will not have any power in that. It will die automatically. Then the soil, it will it will become vulnerable to go along with this runoff water. So we will get a soil erosion. So because of this afforestation. The next activity is like a mining activity. Mining, you know about the large area is taken under this mining activities to extract the minerals. It also causes for the soil degradation and also for the land degradation. What we discussed in the first concept, land degradation, it's a main example or main causes for having land degradation and also for the soil degradation. Then overgrazing. Grazing is nothing but growing a crops. The fodder crops, growing fodder crops for the animals. It's called as grazing, overgrazing. In agriculture, then what we do is we grow the crop. One single crop or double crops, one agriculture year we grow the crops. Then after that we leave that land without growing for 2 months or 1 month. We don't grow anything in that agriculture field for 1 month or 2 months. In that 1 or 2 months, that land, the soil, it will get its fertility. By rainwater, otherwise by adding some manure or anything, that will get a fertility. It will gain a fertility in that duration within 1 month or 2 months. But here in the grazing, the land which is grown fodder crops for the animals, the continuously will be growing. They don't give any gap in between the agriculture year or the, like in the grazing land. So that reason, the soil continuously will be under the like a degrading. It will be depleting. It means it will lose its fertility. So that land, because of this activity, the soil is getting degradation. Then adding or overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. So these are the examples like human activity which is leading towards others, which is causes for the land degradation of the soil. Then natural factors. Natural factors like the flood, then landslide, rainwater like runoff water, otherwise you can say like rainwater, rainfall, rainwater. These are the three important causes or factors which is responsible for the degradation of the soil. Write down these factors, write down these points. Ready? Soil degradation, write down this. Then about this point, then under this you have to make up 2 columns. One is for this human beings, means the factors which is leading which is more in the human activities, then the natural factors. Write down this. Afforestation. I hope you understood about this afforestation. Then the mining. The overgrazing. Grazing is nothing but growing fodder crops in agriculture field. The fodder crops like food for the animals, like a gomala and some. It's not much practice. It's not much practiced in India. It's practiced in the wide ranges in other countries, the foreign countries, like more than 500 and 1000 acres or 100 acres are used to grow this grazing land. So it's under the grazing land. It's because the most of the people in the foreign country, they are having animal husbandry in a large number. They are having animal husbandry, otherwise poultry. That is then overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides that causes for the land soil degradation. Because more chemical fertilizer, it kills the organic matters which presents in the soil. So it's automatically that loses its fertility. Then the natural factors like a flood, and the landslide, and the rainwater. Rainwater is runoff water that erodes the soil. then that loses in fertility in particular places like maybe in the agriculture areas. Is that over? Right on this? Okay, shall we go for next? So here, these all are the factors which is leading towards the degradation of the soil. Then we must have some measures. Is not. If we have a problem and it is very important factors like the soil is very important thing which we need in every day and for every activity. So we are facing a problem because of our activity and as well as natural factors. So we need to have a conservation. Is not. We should conserve the soil for present and as well as for the future generation need. So now we'll discuss about the soil conservation. Soil conservation. So what do you mean by conservation? Conservation. Conservation is nothing but prevention, protecting, or efficient use of something. So it's not a conservation. Like a soil conservation is refers to efficient. It refers to protection and efficient use of soil, otherwise the preservation of soil resource is called as the soil conservation. It's a definition for the soil conservation. It refers to protection or efficient use of soil and preservation of soil resources. Preservation and using the soil resources limited because it's limitedly available on the earth's surface. Soil and land is limitedly available, and that with the fertile soil, the very good soil is limitedly available. We don't have unlimited availability of the soil. So that reason we should have preservation, protection, and efficient judicial use of resources. Like a soil resource is efficient, means it's required. Then what are those measures, conservation measures? So right on this, we'll go for next point. Right on this point, it's a definition for the soil conservation. Make it fast. Soil conservation, it refers to protection, efficient use of soil and preservation of soil resource. Right on this, make it fast. It refers to protection, efficient use of soil, preservation of soil resource. Is it over? It's about soil conservation. Is it over? Okay. We'll go for the next one in this soil conservation. So we understood about this concept. Conservation of soil is important. Why? Because of soil degradation. So in under the soil degradation, there are many other factors which is responsible for the soil degradation that we discuss about human factors. Human factors activities like the natural factors we discuss. And for that, we need to have conservation. So what is soil conservation? We discuss now. It's a meaning. So how can we get into this activity for protecting the soil? So we have some measures, methods. We have soil conservation measures and methods. So we need to follow up all those things. It's the next concept, right on this. Right on this next concept, soil conservation measures. Soil conservation measures or methods. You know the meaning of soil conservation. Now we need to adopt and we need to get into these methods and measures so that we can have a conservation of soil for present and also for the future. So shall we go? Yes. Soil conservation measures, like there are many. In that we will discuss one by one. Mulching. Mulching. It's one measure, like one method to conserve the soil. What is this mulching? Mulching is nothing but covering the bare land in between the two plants. Like here we have a plant. Here we have two plants. Suppose. And here and here we have a plant. So here we have land, it's filled with the mud, Here land, suppose. Here we have some grasses. And here land. And the mulching is nothing but covering this land, covering this bare land in between the plants. In between the plants we have a bare land, is not. So covering this land with the grasses, the grasses to avoid the degradation of soil. Straws like grasses, dried grasses is called as straw. So covering these bare land in between the two plants to avoid the soil erosion or degradation of soil, along with which gets eroded along with the runoff water. It's called as mulching. Is that clear? So, mulching refers to its covering the bare land in between two plants with grasses like straw to avoid soil erosion. It's one of the measures or method to avoid soil erosion. It's called as mulching. Then terrace farming. Otherwise, terrace farming. So what is this terrace farming? Terrace farming is nothing but creating a broad steps, broad terrace in the slopey areas, and which is easy to growing the crops. Like suppose in the slope areas, like gentle slope or steep slopes, like in the hilly areas, in the mountain areas. Here, you get to see this type of terrace farming mainly in the northern part of India. Like in Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir, there you can see such type of terrace farming because we have mountain ranges, many mountains over there. Here terrace farming is nothing but creating terrace here in the slopey areas like this by cutting that or by creating a broader steps there for growing crops. This is called as terrace farming. You might be saw this kind of terrace. So it's called as terrace farming. So here in this area, we can use for growing the crops. You can use this flat area. It will be like a flat, isn't it? The manually, artificially the flat area created in the slopey area, a steep slope or gentle slope in the hilly regions or mountain areas. So it's called as terrace farming. So by having this kind of this type of terrace farming in the slopey areas, it will avoid the soil erosion. Suppose it was the plain area like this. Suppose we are growing the crop over here. What happens when the rain comes? Means when the rainfall prevails in this area, along with the runoff water, the soil will also erode and it will be deposited in the food hills of that any hill or mountain. So these plants, it will not get a fertile soil to grow, isn't it? It will not suitable for the growing crops there. So that reason, to avoid the soil erosion in the slopey areas, the terrace, like the flat surface, the land will be created like this to grow the crops so that it will avoid the soil erosion. It's called as terrace farming. Like creating a big or broader flat, otherwise flat surface to grow crops in slope soil erosion. So it's one of the measures, one of the steps in order to avoid the soil erosions, in order to avoid the degradation of soil in the slopey areas. It's a terrace farming. The next one we have is about contour barriers. Contour barriers. Contour barriers. So what is this contour? Contour is like a border. In a agriculture land you might be knowing, so you'll be having some border in the agriculture land. Borders. It's belong to some other person, is not. And it's belong to Ramappa, it's belong to Somappa. Like this you'll be having some border. It's called as a contours. So why will be having a border here? So there are so many reasons, and it's like a boundary for their particular private resources. And also it avoids the moving of water from one place to another places, and also it avoids moving of some fertile soil from one place to another place. It's called as like a barrier. We call it as contour. It's called as contours. Contour barriers. Barriers like hurdles, keeping some things to avoid enough water. So contour barriers like here, using rocks and grasses and mud, soil, anything to avoid the soil erosion there. It's used to build the barriers. The soil, mud, grasses are used to construct the barriers to avoid the soil erosion. Suppose it's a somewhat slopey area. When rain prevails over here in this area, along with the runoff water, suppose the soil also getting eroded. To avoid the erosion of soil, the contour barriers are practiced in the most of the places. If it is in a slopey area, the contour barriers are practiced. Is that clear? Like rocks, grasses, and soil are used as or building, otherwise are used to build barriers with the contour or near contour or with contour to protect soil. So we can, in these contour barriers, we can store water, even we can store the water by constructing a big called a shallow area. But we can create like this. You might be saw here, like and many of the places will be like, and they will be covered with the tarpaul, and it's used for preserving the water. In many other, you might be saw this kind of things, like this not. So it's called as contour barriers. This contour barriers is also used in approach of this contour by using the grass, rocks for building some buildings like a bridge, so that it will avoid the soil erosion. And also in some other areas they will build like this, like canal they will build like this, so that they can store water there. It's about contour barriers. Then we have many other methods like a contour flowing. So you know what the meaning of flowing is not? Like udodu in a agriculture land. Nella udodu. So it's a flowing. So agriculture flowing. Sorry, the contour flowing, like a flowing in agriculture field parallel to the contours. It's another one method. Suppose it's a slopey area. It's a slopey area, suppose. And flowing in a parallel to these contours that avoids the erosion of soil. Suppose it's a slopey area. Suppose I am flowing this land in a vertical. Vertically I am flowing. What happens when rainwater come? It will erode the soil. It will take up the soil, fertile soil along with that, and that will deposit some other shallow areas. No? If I flow like this. So now the method is that to flow the land in a particular, like a parallel manner with this contour. Flowing of land in a parallel, so that it will avoid the soil erosion. It will avoid soil erosion because it will be having undulations in the earth. It's not, it will be having undulations. So then that will avoid the soil erosion. So that is another one method to avoid the soil erosion. Flowing land parallel to contours. So it will avoid the soil erosion. The next one is about shelter beds. Shelter beds. What is this shelter beds? Shelter beds like mainly in the northern part of Karnataka and Madhya Pradesh, we don't have much mountain ranges, we don't have a hill, and we don't have big buildings in between this agriculture field. The blowing of like a velocity of wind which blows here is very high. In this northern part of Karnataka, especially if you compare with this South Karnataka, the velocity of blowing wind in northern Karnataka is very high. So that is having a chance of eroding the soil, because soil is a top layer of the earth's surface. You will get a chance of eroding the soil because of this blowing of wind. To avoid this velocity, high velocity of blowing of wind, you should have these shelter beds. Shelter beds is nothing but planting a trees. Suppose it's tree. Planting a trees in the border of this agriculture field. It's agriculture field. Planting trees in the border of agriculture field, it checks the blowing of wind. It will avoid, it regulate the velocity, high velocity of wind. Suppose here we are getting more velocity. We don't have our plants. What happens? Along with the blowing wind, the soil, we will be having a chance of getting soil along with that, and it will deposit somewhere else. We will lose the fertility here in this particular place. Is it not? Suppose if we are growing these plants here in the coast or in along these contours, it will regulate, it will stop this, it will reduce the speed of wind, so that we can get a fertile soil over here without eroding or without going along with the wind. It's not. It's a shelter bed. It's another one method which is used. Wide range of activities done under this. Like most of the people, they make use of this idea, methods now. Shelter beds. Growing the crops or growing trees in row to check or avoid the speed of wind. So you know why it's grown like trees are grown in the one row, because to avoid the speed of wind, so that it will reduce the soil erosion. It's a shelter bed and multiple crops. Another one is about multiple crops or cropping. Multiple cropping. That means growing more than one crop in agriculture area. So what happens in the agriculture field? We grow kapu in this row. It's not. We grow the kapu in this row, like sugar cane. We grow the kapus in this row. So you'll be having gap in between these two rows. We are growing kapu over here and here. Suppose, for example, you'll be having gap in between these two rows. So they'll be having chance of eroding soil here in this area. Along with the wind, with the blowing of flow of water, you'll be having chance of eroding this soil over there. To avoid that erosion, to avoid the degradation of soil, we can use this land to grow the ulagadi. We can grow the onion there in between that this one. We can grow ulagadi in between that, like it's called as multiple crop. Multiple. The word itself explains, that says multiple is more than one, is not. So multiple cropping, it avoids erosion of soil. What is multiple cropping? It's growing more than one crops in an agriculture area. This is called as multiple cropping. So these are the 6 important methods. the soil conservation measures. We discussed about the soil conservation, and now it's about the measures, or like methods. We have 6 major methods, like mulching, covering the bare land in between 2 plants with a grass, like a straw. Straw means like a dried crops on a wood to avoid the soil erosion. In the terrace farming, you might be seeing this kind of farmings in Western Ghats and in the northern part of India, in Jammu and Kashmir, Uttarakhand there, because they have slopey areas there. Make it first, then contour barriers, like creating some hurdles, creating some or like a building like structure, like a building dam structure there, and like a wall, building a wall by using these grass and the rocks to avoid the runoff water which carries the soils. And in the contour barriers, that includes like we construct some like a pond. A pond will be constructed, and which the pond it will be covered by the tarpaulins. Is not. It's about these contour barriers. Then contour flowing. Parallelly flowing the land in the slopy areas, that helps in avoiding soil erosion. Then shelter beds, the growing of crops in a one row, in a one border in agriculture land. Growing crops in the border, every border, suppose it is grown, the crops are grown in every 4 corner, like in the 4 borders, it will be good. That avoids the soil erosion. The root of plants also catch hold of the soil, it will not allow to erode the soil easily. Isn't it? Then multiple cropping, more than one. Growing more than 1 crops in an agriculture year in this place, in an agriculture year and in agriculture field, that avoids the soil erosion. Is that work? Make it fast. Make it fast. We'll go for next concept. Is it over? Okay. So about the second concept, we discuss about the meaning, definition of the soil and soil profile and the factors of soil formation. Then about soil degradation and conservation of the soil we discuss, and conservation measures of the soil also we discuss. So that's what we discuss about the 2 concepts. Now we go for the water. The next concept is about the water. So water is a non-renewable, it's a renewable resource, is not. Water is a natural resources, and as well as it is a renewable resources and very important resources, whereas every human beings and every living organisms on the earth surface are in need of this water. And the more percentage on the earth surface is covered by the water. More earth surface, more percent of earth surface is covered by water. So it has a different form. We can get the water in the different forms and different types. We have different types of things where we can get the waters, like the forms of waters: liquid, solid, and gaseous. In these 3 forms, we can get a water. Is not. For the solid, for example, ice; liquid, water; gases, the air will get a water. So that's what the forms, and we have types and like sources. What are the source of water? Sources where we can get the waters: pond, lake, river, sea, ocean, glaciers, underground, rainfall. These are all the sources where we can get this water, isn't it? So our 70% of Earth's surface, 71 and 70% of Earth's surface is covered by the water. Only remaining 30% of Earth's surface is of land. 70% of water is there. In that, only 0.01% is available for drinking. Only 0.01% is having capable to satisfy the need of human beings. It's only fresh water. Isn't it? So we'll discuss about all those things, the importance of water, how much percent of water is available on the Earth's surface, why we need to protect this water, and what are all or which are the places on the Earth's surface is having more availability of water, and what are the places on the Earth's surface is facing scarcity of water, the problem in the water, why they are facing a problem in the water, availability of water. It's a basic need, isn't it? Then we will discuss how can we conserve the water, what are the measures we can store or conserve the water for a future generation as well for the present. We'll discuss about this concept, the third concept, in the next class. I hope you understood about this concept, what we discuss in this class about the soil. Write in your rough notebook, read every day. And I hope you have given answer for the exercise question of a first chapter, which is there in the end of a first chapter. Give answer for that. Write in a separate notebook as I told to make 100 separate notebook for geography, history and civics. There you have to write answer for these questions, exercise questions in that. And what we are teaching in these classes, in the live classes, you have to write in your rough notebook, and in the recorded classes also you have to write in the rough notebook. You have to maintain the rough notebook neatly. You should not write any other information of any other subject in that particular rough notebook of social science. You should have only social science in the one rough notebook, 200 page rough notebook. Where in the second chapter is not. Nothing should be written. Even in the ending of a page, in the last pages, you should not draw any picture of yours and your friends. You should not write anything there. It should be very clean and neat. You should maintain it. You should not write unnecessary things in the pages what you are written on all the topics there. You should not write unnecessary things there. Okay. We will end the class today and we will start with the water in the next class.